When a Pima County officer says that destruction in this case is intentional and attaches the word damning to the associated claim, the investigative implications of that statement go well beyond the routine acknowledgement that evidence has been lost. Intentional destruction of evidence is not an accident. It is a choice made by someone who understood what that evidence was, understood that it would connect them to a crime, and made a deliberate decision to eliminate it. That statement, made this week by a law enforcement officer within the department that has jurisdiction over the Nancy Guthrie investigation, is one of the most operationally significant things that any official voice has said publicly about this case. It tells the public that investigators believe evidence was destroyed with intent, and it implies that they have a basis for that belief, meaning they have identified either what was destroyed, how it was destroyed, or some combination of both. At the same moment, a new name has entered the public record: Marcus, connected to a burner phone call being described as critical, connected to an abandoned red Honda, connected to claims about a failed ransom attempt. These are specific, physical, operational details that sit alongside the intentional destruction claim in a way that suggests investigators are building a picture of specific people and specific events, rather than an abstract criminal operation. Gayle King issued a strong plea this week, calling on the public to come forward with information, stating plainly that somebody knows something. That appeal is not just a celebrity statement. It is a reflection of investigative reality. In a case where the insider theory has been formally articulated, and where the suspected kidnapper may be someone from Nancy Guthrie's social world, the public that Gayle King is addressing includes people in that social world who may have information they have not yet brought forward. This report examines the intentional destruction claim, what it means for the investigation, the Marcus name and its physical context, Gayle King's appeal and why it matters at this specific moment, and the overall investigative picture as it stands today. The intentional destruction claim is where this analysis begins, because it changes the frame for understanding everything else. When an investigative agency determines that evidence has been intentionally destroyed in connection with a crime, they are drawing a specific conclusion from specific evidence. They are not simply noting that evidence is missing or that the crime scene was imperfect. They are saying that a human being made a decision to eliminate material that would otherwise have connected them to the crime. That conclusion requires a basis. The basis could be physical, meaning investigators can see the signs of deliberate elimination in the way materials were removed, burned, or otherwise destroyed. It could be circumstantial, meaning the pattern of what is missing and what is present is inconsistent with natural degradation or casual disorganization, and points instead toward purposeful selection of what to eliminate. Or it could be testimonial, meaning someone with knowledge of the destruction has provided information about what happened and why. The officer's use of the word damning in connection with the intentional destruction claim suggests that the associated information or evidence carries significant weight for the investigation. Damning is a term that implies something that substantially inculpates a specific individual or set of individuals. When an officer describes a claim as damning, they are communicating that the information in question, if confirmed, would be highly adverse to the interests of whoever it points to. The combination of intentional destruction with a damning claim creates a picture of an investigation in which specific individuals are being pointed to by specific evidence, and in which those individuals have attempted to eliminate that evidence. That pattern, in the context of the insider theory, is highly consistent with someone who had pre-existing access to Nancy Guthrie's life and who understood what evidence their presence might have left behind. An insider who decides to destroy evidence is making a calculated judgment about what investigators are likely to find and what needs to be eliminated to prevent identification. The precision required for that judgment requires knowledge of both the investigative process and of what specific evidence exists. A stranger who committed a kidnapping would be unlikely to have that precision. Someone who knew Nancy Guthrie, who knew her home, and who understood what evidence of their presence might be present would have that precision. The intentional destruction claim also connects to the Pima County Sheriff's Department's ongoing credibility challenges. The officer who made this statement is doing so within a department that has produced multiple communication failures during this investigation. The fact that an officer within the department is making a substantive, specific, damning claim publicly in a department that has struggled with communication precision adds a layer of analytical complexity to how the claim should be assessed. It may reflect genuine investigative progress being communicated through an unusually direct channel, or it may reflect the same imprecision in public communication that has characterized the department's handling of this case throughout. The Marcus situation requires the kind of careful, layered analysis that single-source, emerging claims in high-profile cases always require, because the range of possibilities is wide, and the consequences of overclaiming are real. What the public record contains about Marcus this week is the following. A name has emerged through sources that include social media, true crime investigative accounts, and reporting that is drawing on information about the Nancy Guthrie case from channels outside the official investigative structure. The name is connected to a burner phone call that is being described as critical to the investigation. It is connected to claims about a failed ransom attempt, and it is connected to information about an abandoned red Honda that a true crime investigative page is preparing to release. Each of those connections, taken individually, would be worth assessing, but not worth treating as confirmed. Together, they compose a network of specific, operational details that share a common source and a common evidentiary reference point. When multiple specific claims from the same source involve the same name in connection with multiple distinct physical details, the probability that the underlying claim has some evidentiary basis increases. The burner phone call element is the most investigatively significant of the Marcus connections. A burner phone is a device purchased specifically for unattributed communication. People use burner phones when they want to make calls that cannot be traced back to their regular identity. In a kidnapping case, the use of a burner phone for communication is expected. What makes the specific call being described as critical is not simply that it was made from a burner phone, but that its content, or the information that can be derived from its origin, timing, or other characteristics, is significant enough to change the investigative picture. A failed ransom attempt is a separate element that also carries specific investigative meaning. If a ransom demand was made that was not fulfilled, it means the perpetrator attempted to convert the abduction into a financial transaction and was unsuccessful. The failure of that attempt could reflect law enforcement intervention, the family's decision not to comply, the perpetrator's inability to create the conditions for payment, or some combination of those factors. Whatever the cause of the failure, it tells investigators something about the timeline of the case and about the perpetrator's expectations and capabilities. The abandoned red Honda adds a physical, geographic dimension to the Marcus investigation thread. A vehicle that can be connected to the crime and that has been abandoned tells investigators about the perpetrator's movements and potentially about where they went after the vehicle was left. If the Honda can be traced to a registered owner, or if forensic examination of the vehicle produces biological material, the physical evidence chain becomes more direct. Sheriff Chris Nanos' response to the Tucson detention claim this week is part of this same investigative picture. A person was reportedly detained in connection with the case, and the sheriff responded publicly to the claim. Whether that response confirmed, denied, or clarified the detention claim is information that directly affects how the Marcus situation should be understood. A confirmed detention, in the context of a Marcus claim and a burner phone call described as critical, would suggest that investigators are in direct contact with someone they believe has knowledge of the case. The insider theory has now been formally established as the dominant expert framework for understanding the Nancy Guthrie abduction, and this week's specific claims push it from the general to the individual level. The ex-FBI agents claim that Nancy Guthrie knew her masked abductor is the most direct articulation of the insider theory that has yet appeared in the public record. The claim is specific. It does not say that the kidnapper might have known Nancy Guthrie or that the evidence is consistent with an insider. It says, as a matter of expert assessment, that she knew the person who took her. That claim rests on a specific evidential and analytical foundation. What the ex-FBI agent knows or has assessed about the case that leads to this conclusion is not fully in the public record. But an experienced agent does not make this kind of specific claim casually or without a basis that they believe is defensible. The claim reflects either specific evidence that points toward prior acquaintance, behavioral analysis of the abduction that is inconsistent with how strangers typically execute kidnappings, or information about the victim's social circumstances that makes the insider hypothesis far more probable than the stranger hypothesis. The mask element of the claim is particularly significant. If the abductor wore a mask specifically because Nancy Guthrie would have recognized them without it, the mask is evidence of a specific kind of relationship, not just a pre-existing connection, but a connection that the abductor was actively working to conceal from the victim during the commission of the crime. That is a very specific and very uncomfortable kind of relationship to contemplate. It means someone who was in Nancy Guthrie's life, who had her trust in some form, and who understood that trust would be immediately and irrevocably broken the moment she saw their face. The new theory, suggesting involvement of someone she knew, published this week, adds analytical depth to the ex-FBI agent's specific claim. When expert analysts provide the reasoning behind the insider hypothesis, they are building the evidentiary case for it in a way that makes the claim more than an assertion. They are showing the analytical work that leads to the conclusion, which allows other investigators, analysts, and informed observers to evaluate the reasoning independently. Subscribe here to continue with this coverage as the insider theory produces new developments, because the specific name that has entered the public record this week may be the bridge between the theoretical framework and the actual identification. Savannah Guthrie's statement that she believes some of the ransom notes are real has specific implications in the insider theory framework. If some notes are real, meaning they contain genuine information that only the actual kidnapper would have, and some are not real, meaning they are fabrications or hoaxes from unconnected parties, the real notes are the ones that reflect insider knowledge. The discernment between real and false notes, made by someone with access to information about what an insider would know, is exactly the kind of human intelligence that supplements forensic evidence in building a case. Gayle King's public appeal deserves attention not simply as a celebrity statement, but as a strategic communication choice that reflects the case's current investigative needs. King stated plainly that somebody knows something and called on the public to come forward. That phrase, somebody knows something, is the standard formulation of a witness appeal in a case where investigators believe there are people in the public with relevant information who have not yet come forward. It is used when investigators have reason to believe the circle of people with knowledge extends beyond the perpetrator to other individuals who were present, who heard something, who saw something, or who have been told something by someone involved. In the context of the insider theory, the circle of people who might know something includes anyone in Nancy Guthrie's social network who was also connected to the person who took her. If the kidnapper is someone Nancy knew, they are also someone who is known by other people in her world. Those other people may have information they do not recognize as relevant. They may have information they are reluctant to share because of loyalty or fear. Or they may have information they have already tried to share through channels that did not produce a response. King's appeal reaches all of those categories simultaneously. Her public profile and her direct, personal framing of the appeal create a form of permission for people with information to act on what they know. In high-profile cases, celebrity appeals for witness information have produced results in cases where law enforcement appeals alone were insufficient to move people to action. The timing of King's appeal, alongside the Marcus claims and the intentional destruction allegation, suggests a coordinated public pressure moment designed to produce witness engagement at a time when the investigation has specific information gaps that public sources might fill. Whether that coordination is deliberate or coincidental does not affect its practical impact. The grim truth about Savannah Guthrie's return to her morning broadcast, reported this week, adds another layer to the picture of how the family is navigating this investigation in public. A grim truth implies something about the context of the return that is more complicated or more painful than a simple resumption of professional routine. Whether that grim truth is connected to specific information the family has received about the investigation, to the medical reality of 78 days without medication, or to some other dimension of the situation that has not been fully shared publicly, it reflects the sustained and deepening difficulty of what the Guthrie family is living through. Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni's bold warning this week, consistent with the coordinated family communication shift of the past several days, adds their voices to the public pressure being applied at what appears to be a deliberate and coordinated moment in the investigation's public narrative. The Nancy Guthrie investigation is generating specific, physical, operational details at a pace that suggests the investigation is in its most active phase yet. A specific name, a critical phone call, an abandoned vehicle, intentional destruction of evidence, a plea from a national figure, a family issuing coordinated warnings, all of it happening in the same week. What that convergence means for the investigation's next development is something that will become clear as the True Crime page releases the information it is teasing, as investigators process the Marcus claim, and as the FBI's DNA analysis continues to work through the material collected from Nancy Guthrie's home. Gayle King's public appeal for witnesses, while widely covered as a celebrity statement, represents something more structurally significant when examined in the context of the investigation's current needs. Witness appeals in active kidnapping cases are made when investigators believe there are people in the public who have relevant information that has not yet reached the investigative apparatus. They are not made as a matter of routine publicity. They are made when the investigation has identified specific gaps in its witness intelligence and believes those gaps can be filled by motivated public engagement. In the Nancy Guthrie case, at this specific moment, the insider theory creates a specific kind of witness intelligence gap. If the kidnapper is someone who was part of Nancy Guthrie's social world, then the witnesses who matter most are not random members of the public, but specific people who knew both Nancy Guthrie and the person who took her. Those people may know something that they do not recognize as investigatively relevant. They may know something they are reluctant to share, or they may have already tried to share information through channels that did not produce a response. Gayle King's appeal reaches all of those categories in a specific way that a formal law enforcement request might not. King is not asking people to call a police tip line, which many people are reluctant to do. She is making a direct, personal appeal to the human conscience of anyone who has information. The psychological barrier to action in response to a direct, personal appeal from a recognized public figure is lower than the barrier to initiating formal contact with law enforcement. The timing of the appeal, alongside the Marcus claim and the intentional destruction allegation, is not coincidental in its effect, even if it is not formally coordinated. What the timing creates is a concentrated public pressure moment in which multiple high-credibility voices, a former FBI agent, a Pima County officer, a national public figure, and multiple family members are all simultaneously communicating the urgency of the current investigative moment. That concentration of pressure is designed, whether explicitly or organically, to produce the kind of witness engagement that might not happen in a lower pressure environment. In the context of the insider theory, the The witness who might break this case open is someone specific. Someone who knows Marcus, if Marcus is the person responsible. Someone who observed a specific interaction between Nancy Guthrie and the person who took her in the period before the abduction. Someone who noticed the abandoned red Honda in a specific location. Someone who received a communication from a burner phone that they did not recognize as significant at the time. Gayle King's appeal, in this framing, is not a general call to the public. It is a targeted message to a specific set of people who exist in the social world connected to this case. Whether one of those people responds, and what they know if they do, is the question that the appeal is designed to answer. The intentional destruction claim, meanwhile, tells investigators that whoever is responsible has already made attempts to eliminate the evidence trail. But intentional destruction is rarely complete. Destroying one piece of evidence does not eliminate the investigative record of what that evidence was or why it was targeted. Investigators who know that destruction was intentional also know what type of evidence was at risk of existing, and that knowledge guides their search for what remains. The investigation is converging on an identification at a pace that this week's specific, physical, operational details make clearer than any prior week. The next development, when it arrives, may be the one that answers the question that this case has been building toward for more than 11 weeks. One dimension of this week's developments that connects the institutional and investigative threads is the continued communication challenges within the Pima County Sheriff's Department. The same department whose officer is now making a damning claim about intentional destruction of evidence is the department that has produced misleading alerts, tone-deaf social media posts, and allegations of leadership failures throughout this investigation. The fact that meaningful investigative claims are now emerging from within the department, alongside its public communication difficulties, suggests that the internal investigative capacity of the department is functioning at a different level than its public communication capacity. That distinction is important. A department that is making genuine investigative progress while simultaneously producing public communication failures is a department in which the forensic work and the institutional presentation are on separate tracks. The FBI's involvement ensures that the forensic work continues at the highest available level, regardless of what is happening in the department's public-facing activity. But the convergence of a damning claim from a local officer with a critical phone call, an abandoned vehicle, and a new name in the same week suggests that the investigative tracks, local and federal, may be approaching the same destination from different directions.